All right, y'all. So Candace Owens and Nick Fuentes is going at it again on X. What should I give y'all first? The video that Nick Fuentes made or Candace Owens' response? We'll give you Candace Owens' response first. She said, it is literally satanic occult being a PDF file. Yes, this is guiding theology amongst the elite. And to give y'all some reference right now, he is saying that Jeffrey Epstein is not a PDF file. Again, he is saying Jeffrey Epstein is not a PDF file. So this is the background of what this is about. And she says, and Nick is trying to assist them in convincing the world that Satan is a conspiracy theory. This is why he always runs cover for Brigitte Macron. The elites practice ritualistic satanic child essay, and even the slightest incursion into the history of Sigmund Freud and his perverted Viennese colleagues whose offspring are still in power today and whom established Hollywood and our mainstream media apparatus will lead you to this conclusion. If Nick would like to debate this topic, I am completely game. Since you know I'm a sub-Saharan African and he's so naturally brilliant, this should be a cakewalk for him. So if you don't know, Nick Fuentes is a racist, a literal white nationalist racist. Like, he's openly racist, y'all. It's crazy that you can be openly racist in 2026. But he is, and he has a massive following. This is kind of scary, actually. He literally thinks people that are not of the white race have a lower IQ. This is like his ultimate go-to response. Oh, low IQ. Everybody who disagrees with him, low IQ, low IQ. And then he attacked Candace Owens saying she's a black woman, stupid black woman. So then Nick responds with, just a diversion. I'm more interested in the interactive timeline of the Egyptian plains, which you promised to release over a month ago. Where's that? Also hilarious how you're still seething about the sub-Saharan IQ. Must have struck a nerve. Ghetto idiot. So he just has some kind of vitriol towards anybody of color, and it's disgusting. But there's more to this whole thread. But now I'm going to show you what Nick's video is about.
But what I said, and the point that I'm making about Epstein, people are getting caught up in the sensationalism of pedophile. And I said this last year when the story broke. I said the exact same thing. I said, yes, they are sex crimes. Obviously, it is human trafficking. Obviously, according to the law, it is statutory rape. But it is in the service of a blackmail ring for intelligence. It is important not to lose sight of that. And this is a category error. People say you're a pedo protector, but Trump is not protecting pedophiles because they're pedophiles. He's protecting sex criminals because they are a part of a subversive intelligence network. That's the point. And I said that in July, and I said that when there was more urgency for the files to be released in the fall. I said, let's not get too hung up on the sensational details of the actual sex crime, because this is not just about somebody was trafficking girls somewhere. That's not the story. The story is someone was trafficking girls to acquire blackmail to sell to Israel. That is the point. And that is what I said last night. I said, for someone to make it all about pedophilia, I said, it's kind of just like, it's not really true, because again, it does get away from what's happening there. It is not satanic, pedophilia, occult stuff. It is really...
And that's where Candace Owens clapped back, because it is satanic. I mean, do you know what these people engage in? The people with the highest power in the world? Satan runs the world. He's the God of this world. This is scripture. And Nick Fuentes claims to be a Christian. He's a Catholic. I mean, shouldn't, and apparently he's so smart because he's a white man, right? And he just thinks anybody who is of color has a low IQ. So if he's so smart, he's literally describes himself as a Catholic. Shouldn't you know your own book, the Bible? Their Bible is a little bit different, but I think it contains all the books that a regular Bible contains with some more added. But if he's that smart, shouldn't he know the Bible by heart, essentially, if he's that intelligent? Because in the Bible, it says that Satan is the God of this world. Shouldn't he know this? And shouldn't he know if Satan's the God of this world, that people like Epstein and Trump, who are the leaders of the world, Epstein wasn't in political power, but he actually did have a lot of power over politicians, which he acknowledges. Shouldn't he understand that these people, to get to that position, they have to be satanic, or they are satanic? And that's the only people who make it to those types of power levels of elites in the world. Shouldn't he understand this if he's so daggone smart? I mean, and it's funny because he doesn't even bring up scripture, but he's, quote, a Christian. I mean, it's Catholic, but yeah, I mean, anyways, this guy, as you can see, really pissed me off because everything about this guy is destructive, very destructive. And he did speak some truth previously, but he's been doing 180 turns and just making no sense. What he's talking about now, what he's pushing now is so bad, it's so destructive. You know, he was always racist, but what he's pushing now, y'all, it is defending the child essayers. It is defending that. And then he made another video. I want to show you guys this because he's technically right on one specific point, and we're going to go into that. And this is something I did not know previously. He's technically right on a very minor point that we're going to go into. But I still believe Candace is right in this kind of back and forth because the PDF file stuff matters. And who are you to think that somebody like Epstein is not going to engage in that? Let me just say, it's so naive to think people like Jeffrey Epstein and people that's in this, trafficking of young ones, they're going to stick to 14 and older. Like, why would you believe that? Even you're just going to assume that these people who are this wicked, they're not going to care. They're going to do younger than 14. But anyways, let's get back to the video, and I'm going to show where Nick Fuentes is just right on one. Here we go.
You niggas are not ready for that conversation.
And you think he's so cool by saying the N-word. I mean, I can definitely say it because I'm black. I consider myself black. I'm not fully black, but I'm black enough to say it. Like, I literally have black blood in me, African blood. Yeah, so he think he's so cool to say niggas or whatever. And then he says it with the AS, and then he says it with the hard R. He's a lame. Anyways.
But Jeff Epstein, not a pedophile. But you're not ready for that conversation. All of his victims, 14 to 17. That's not pedophilia.
This is what I just recently learned. I thought PDF file was anybody who is attracted to, wants to have sex with young ones, as long as they are legally a minor, any minor, an attraction to any minor at all is PDF file. But technically, by the medical definition, which I literally looked up, it only refers to prepubescent children. Only refers to prepubescent children. So technically, if it's somebody who is 15, then it's not PDF, being a PDF file, which I think is super confusing, honestly. I would say any kind of sexual interaction, there shouldn't be all these different terms for these medical definitions, because that's what it is. And I'm going to show you really quick. Medical definitions, right? Let's see if we can get to it here. This is Merriam-Webster. Sexual perversion with young ones are the preferred sexual object. Specifically, this is where Nick Fuentes is right. And I hate to admit that he's right here, but specifically a psychiatric disorder in which an adult has sexual fantasies about or engages in sexual acts with a prepubescent young one. I say young one because I think if I say this word, it will flag the video and demonetize or whatever. So I did Gemini with the AI too. And yeah, it's a clinical definition in psychology and psychiatry, specifically the DSM-5-TR. The PDF file disorder has a strict definition regarding age, target attraction, and involves sexual attraction specifically to prepubescent young ones, generally age 13 or younger. The age gap requirement, this individual must be at least 16 years old and at least 5 years older than the child. Specifically, attraction to a 17, because I asked about 17, because 17 is a minor under the legal definition and a child under what the U.S. considers an adult versus child. The U.S. considers an adult somebody who turns 18. So I'm like, what about 17? Is that PDF file? And then it says 17-year-old who is post-pubescent does not meet the diagnostic criteria for being a PDF file, which I just think is really weird, y'all. We should just stick with one. Have all these different medical terms. It's just confusing. All these different things right here. The hebephilia, the ephebophilia, like what the heck? It's just utter confusion. And then it goes into the legal distinction with the age of consent, which it depends on the state. usually 16, 17, or 18, which is to me crazy. 16 is a child, 17 is a child, 18. So it's got all this confusing stuff in the US. The age of an adult, where you're considered an actual adult, is 18, but the age of consent is different than the age of different things. The different medical distinctions is different. So the PDF file is 13 and under, not sexually developed. Hebephilia is pubescent, approximately 11 through 14, the early stages of development. Ephebophilia is postpubescent, 15 through 19. Sexually developed young adults. None of this, all this is confusing. So it says a grown man with a 17-year-old may be committing a crime if the age of consent is 18 or acting within the law if the age of consent is 16 or 17, which in my opinion, I believe biblically is wrong and sick. But he is not clinically a PDF file. Well, we learned something new today, guys. This is just weird, though. It is weird, in my opinion. What the heck? So then I asked another question, right? But an adult is 18 in the U.S. Does that mean 17 is a child? And they said, you are correct on the legal definition, but the confusion comes from the fact that the word child means different things to a judge than it does to a psychologist. What kind of confusion is this system, y'all? 17-year-old, a child? Yes, legally anybody under the age of majority, 18 in most U.S. states, is a minor or a child. What this means, they cannot vote, sign contracts, or buy alcohol. But in a sexual context, the law often has a different age for sexual adulthood. Age of consent. In many states, New York, Texas, or Georgia, the age of consent is 17 or 16. And I have a subscriber that is a woman who had a child at 14, and she thinks, it's okay to have your opinion that you could consent even at that age. But in my opinion, your brain doesn't even fully develop till 25. And in the Bible, you could not pay the temple tax or go to war till 20 years old. And you can't drink alcohol in the U.S. till 21. So I think 20, honestly, based on the human development of the mind and the brain and everything, I think 20 should be the age of an adult. So then it says the clinical definition by the psychologist is a 17-year-old a child. It says no. In a specific context of diagnosing PDF file, the medical definition of a child prepubescent generally is under age 13. So now going back to this video, let's hear the rest of it.
But y'all niggas ain't ready for that conversation. People say that's normalizing pedophilia. No, that's defining pedophilia.
So this is the point he's correct about, which again, I hate to admit because I really don't like this guy. But I don't get why he's still defending Epstein. He's still saying, oh, he doesn't think that it's beyond Epstein to even mess with younger children who are younger than 13, and defending Trump. And I don't get why he's dying on his hill type thing.
Pedophilia is sex with children. Are people that are before the age of sexual maturity. Now, you can have your opinion and your taste and your ethics and your morals, but after the age of 14, that is past the point of sexual maturity, just period, biologically. And all of these feminists and all of their accomplices, the simps, they all want to say there's only two genders. They want to talk about reproduction and genitals. Okay, let's talk about reproduction and genitals. When do men and women reach the age of sexual maturity? It ain't 18. It isn't 20. I've seen women say a 20-year-old girl is a literal child. No, sorry.
Yeah, that's wrong. 20 is definitely an adult. And I don't know why people say that about people in their younger 20s. Because I had people coming at me. And let me put this on full screen. Yeah, but I have people coming at me because I've been interested in women who are in their early 20s for dating purposes. And somebody literally called me a PDF file because of that. One of my ops from the past, so you may remember, not going to mention his name, like, you're a PDF file, you're in your 30s. So when you were 20s, that means she was like 10. I mean, that's stupid logic, by the way, first of all. But anyways, why would you consider somebody who's 20, 21, 22, 23 a child when legally, by the U.S., they're an adult, and even biblically, they're an adult. They can go to war and pay the temple tax at 20. Check the Torah, Numbers, and I think Exodus. So it's just really stupid that people get on men who don't mind the age gaps. That's something I've talked about a year ago or so that I got a lot of flack about. People looked at me kind of weird because of that, and I don't care. I really don't. I think I like younger women. I just do. I also like women my age. But the problem is with somebody who's 30-something and still single, the problem is if you want to find a wife who doesn't have kids yet, the problem is most women who have already had kids by now at 30, 34, 33, their mid-30s. Most women my age have already had kids, been married, divorced, and it's like, I don't want to deal with that. I just want to meet a woman, just no kids, hasn't got married yet. For me, that's going to be somebody generally, by like statistics, they're going to be younger. They're going to be younger. A woman my age has been through life already. And most have already gotten started with marriages and divorce and kids. And I want a fresh start lady who's usually going to be younger. So, but, younger 20s is very young for me, honestly. I'd say I'd rather mid to late 20s. I'd rather mid to late 20s. But I'm not going to say if I meet a woman who's 22, I'm not going to say you're too young for me. If she's nice, if she's a woman of God, she's saved, and she's respectful, it's like I'm not going to say you're too young for me. Not at all. Not at all. She's fully developed. She's an adult, biblically and legally. And anybody who says otherwise, you're literally it's just your opinion. But anyways, I'm going on a tangent here. I'm going on a tangent about this because I hate when people, they judge men for wanting to be in age gap relationships. There's a reason for it. There's a reason for it. Because maybe the man has developed later on in life and got himself together later on in life, and they want to marry their first wife with somebody who doesn't have like a big past of being in a marriage before and divorcing and having children. All right, I'm repeating myself. But with all that said, I'm still concerned about Nick when it comes to his attraction to women. It's like, it seems like he's dying on his hill of the whole age of consent stuff. And I'm concerned that, he's just in sexual immorality in a bad way, in a really bad way. I don't know. I'm not going to call him a PDF file, but it's still, yeah. Anyways, somebody said, Nick thinks if they menstruate, they qualify. I mean, that's really what it sounded like. That's really what it sounded like. That's not a man who is attracted to a woman or someone who respects a woman psychologically at 13 is not close to 18. 18 is stretching it, but even that is looked at rightfully so with men much older. I don't care about Nick's orientation, I do not, but I do care that his views on the subject are very dangerous, and he may be the number one influencer with today's youth, which he is, I would say, with the younger youth in terms of politics and stuff like this. He's probably the biggest influencer with youth who are interested in politics. Very scary, y'all. The law is under 18 for a reason. Also, Nick isn't considering that these women were trafficked and picked out because they had nowhere to go. What in the world is he talking about? It's repulsive and he needs to be repudiated. Are we going to be a country that believes in blurring the lines of PDF files? Let me know, as I will have to move to another country. I think we're already there because as we looked at definitions, it's very confusing. And it's, yeah. I think it's really happening, y'all. I think it's really happening that we're blurring the lines. Whatever the definition is, the technical, medical, psychological definition, regardless of what these different medical definitions say, it is wrong if you sleep with somebody that's below the age of consent and you're an adult. But what's crazy is that the age of consent seems so low to me in some states. 16 in some states? What states are 16? Like when I was 16, I'm just thinking about when I was 16, making dumb decisions. That's actually when I did lose my virginity at 16 though, but it was with somebody my age. But what states are 16? Because that is really weird to me. The age of consent is 16 in many U.S. states, including Alabama. That's not surprising. Alaska, Arkansas, Connecticut. So I guess it doesn't have to be southern states. Georgia. I'm in Georgia. Is it really 16? A grown man in these states, does that mean a grown man who's 30 can sleep with somebody who's 16 in these states? Is that what that means? Let's ask Gemini, shall we? In states where the strictly defined age of consent is 16, such as Georgia, Michigan, South Carolina, the short answer is generally yes, legally speaking. If the state sets the age of consent at 16, a 16-year-old is considered legally capable of consenting to sex with an adult of any age, including a 30-year-old. In these jurisdictions, this would typically not be charged as statutory rape. However, there are 3 major fine print exceptions that could still make this a crime, even in those states. The position of trust, the exception. Teachers, okay, because I'm like, there's been situations where teachers, grown people have been in sexual relationships with somebody who's in high school, 16, and they gotten busted for that. So I'm like, if it's 16, then how would they get busted? But that makes sense because it's an exception. You can't do it from a position of trust. Coaches, step parents, clergy, counselors. Yeah, so in that case, that would be a crime called abuse of a position of trust. Crossing state lines, if you cross the state lines through a different state, then you'll face those charges. Specific state nuances. The Romeo and Juliet variant, some states effectively have an age of consent of 18, but allow exceptions for partners who are in a close age within 4 years. Okay. In a state like that, a 19-year-old could sleep with a 16-year-old, but a 30-year-old could not. Example, Florida. Florida has an age of consent of 18. However, if it allows sex between a 16-year-old and somebody who is up to the age of 23, a 30-year-old would still be committing a felony. So, in the specific state has a flat age of consent of 16 like Nevada or Maine, and a 30-year-old is not in a position of authority like a teacher, then yes, the relationship is likely legal in the eyes of the criminal law. And it says, I'm an AI, not a lawyer. But I mean, I see what it says, it makes sense. Really weird. Pretty strange, y'all. I mean, I want to know y'all's thoughts. I mean, what do you think about this biblically? From a biblical standpoint, what do you think God is okay with when it comes to this age stuff? Do you think that the age consent laws are, God's okay with that? Like, it's like God will allow that. If a 30-year-old man decides to sleep with a 16-year-old and it's no power of authority, it's consensual, the law allows that apparently in a lot of states in the U.S. Do you think biblically that's okay? Again, I gave you my opinion earlier. I think 20 years old is the age when you truly become an adult, 20. Because at that age, you can pay the temple tax, you're given more responsibilities, you can go to war. And again, in Numbers and Exodus, I don't have the exact scriptures with me right now. But with that said, I think the only exception to this would be if you are the same age of the other person. Like, let's say we're both 16. We're both 16, me and the girl and I. We're both 16 and we have sex at 16. Okay, we're the same age, Or you're both not an adult, so 16 and 17. You're both not an adult. So that to me, I think would be morally okay. If you're in the states where the age is 16. And then also the Romeo and Juliet laws. I can kind of understand that, the Romeo and Juliet. I can kind of see how that's, it's like the age gap isn't that far, but and that goes for the law. That's law, the law of the land, the Romeo and Juliet laws. I think it's a 4-year age gap. But you have a 30-year-old with a 16-year-old. I just think that's wrong, y'all. Let me know what you think, because very sensitive topic, very sensitive, tough discussion to talk about. But we learned a lot today, and I'm curious what you all think. Anyways, take care. May the Lord keep you. May he bless you. May he shine his face upon you always and give you peace. Believe on the Lord Jesus Christ, and you shall be saved. Amen.